I thought it was still going to keep going, and that was going to make me really nervous. Good morning. I'm like really echoey, I feel. If we haven't met, I'm Pastor Macy, and I serve as the associate and youth pastor here at BNC. Thank you so much for joining me on this wonderful and beautiful Sunday morning. I'm grateful for all Sunday mornings, but particularly Sunday mornings where we gather together as God's people and as God's beloved to celebrate and worship who He is. And so thank you for doing that with me this morning. That's a gift. For the last several weeks, we have been in a series called Events, right? And this series, I hope that you've realized, is not just a series where we add to your busy lives and busy schedules and busy calendars, but it's one where we've questioned and maybe even challenged your ideas on what our time here on this earth looks like. Every year, we have big and exciting days that we live in anticipation for. Personally, I love birthdays. They're my favorite. October 12th, best birthday there is. Holidays, graduations, weddings, and anniversaries. In a lot of ways, these major events mark our lives. They shape us and they remind us of our accomplishments and our successes, and sometimes they remind us of the most important things and the most important people, and sometimes they even remind us of our greatest heartbreak. But these big, exciting, and maybe even emotional days usually are few and far between. Between each of those important days are your regular and ordinary ones. Your average Monday doesn't seem important at all. The days that are full of meeting after meeting after meeting. The days when you never get out of your PJs and you just hide from the outside world. Those are some of my favorites. The worst days full of traffic and arguments in your household. The days that fly by and the days that drag longer than you ever imagined possible. The minutes feel like years. Always passing by, always fleeting, seemingly uneventful and mundane, until we realize that God is present in all of our days. Uneventful and mundane until we realize that His faithfulness to us never changes no matter the day, circumstances, or events. And so through this series, we've talked about a number of things. I actually opened this series on Mother's Day with its many complexities. And while it contains joy for some, it carries grief for others. And we've talked about this day, where Pastor Scott talked about our present day and what God is doing in it. And we've talked about the best day, where Pastor Tom reminded us the foundational truth that we were created on purpose for a purpose. And last week, Pastor Scott talked about Monday, the beginning of our work week, and he challenged us to reclaim Mondays for the kingdom because our work matters, and it's our mission. It's the very opportunity that we get to share Jesus to the world around us. And I'm truly sorry that I missed last week's message. My Tuesday night group had a really great conversation about it. Shout out to my girls. But they spent quite a bit of time talking about what it is they enjoyed about it, what it is they were challenged by, the things that they questioned, some of the conversations they've even had at work. We had a great conversation, and so I'm sorry that I missed it, but I hope that it was a message that challenged you too. I hope it was something that was transformational for you. I hope the Lord convicted you in the best possible ways, because He always does. But today, we find ourselves talking about another major event in life and in the life of our church family here at BNC. So welcome to Graduation Sunday. Round of applause, please, for our graduates again. So, graduations are a big deal. And hopefully you've noticed that here at BNC, we like to take Graduation Sunday very seriously. This is actually my 5th Graduation Sunday serving here, which is really cool. But every single year, and I'm giving you a warning on purpose, every single year this day becomes increasingly bittersweet for me because, boy, I am so proud of our graduates, but I am also so sad at the thought that after this summer, they won't be around anymore. They won't be around as frequently, and that makes me really sad. So if I, at any point, I'm not looking down, if I, at any point, look a little bit emotional, don't talk to me about it. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know. But with that being said, it's a wonderful day. It's a bittersweet day. It's a day of celebration, and there's cupcakes and cute pictures out in the lobbies, and you'll see our graduates come up onto the platform here soon in their regalia. I learned earlier today that they didn't know what that word was. So if you don't know, caps and gowns and things. But first, I want to invite you to please linger around after service today. Visit with the graduates, offer them a word of encouragement, tell them congratulations, tell them you're proud of them, and please, please eat a cupcake. Do not leave me with 40 cupcakes. I don't want to do that. Don't. Eat a cupcake. You can handle it, I promise. But this celebration isn't only an awesome day and an awesome account of how awesome our grads are, and hear me loud and clear when I say that they are awesome. Say woo. Thank you. So, they're awesome, but today should point back to God and his faithfulness. Amen? Thank you. And at the end of this message, we are going to hear from our graduates, and we are going to hear about how God is leading them and into their next chapter. But graduation day isn't just a day here at BNC. It's a big event in basically everyone's life. Most people go through a high school graduation. Not all of them. If you ask Amy Disney, her high school gave her her diploma because they didn't want her there anymore. She's still convinced that she didn't actually graduate high school, which I think is really funny. She did, I promise. They don't just hand those to people. Like I said, and most people graduate from high school, Amy Disney included, but there are also a number of people that will graduate from college and get other education and experience, and it's an awesome thing. And so most students wait for graduation, and it's exciting, and they live in anticipation because they mostly want to be done. They're all done with school. They don't want to do it anymore. That marks when they're done. They can cross it off the list, right? But I think that they also, at least for me as a previous student, we look on that day with pride, knowing that they've accomplished something incredible, something that they've spent actually years working toward. And some students look at graduation day with fear, with a question of, what's next? What does God have in store for me? How am I supposed to know? How do I find out? Do I go to college? Do I get a job? What do I do? Where do I go? Parents also have a lot of feelings revolving their children's graduation. Most parents look at their kindergartner and think, wow, 12th grade feels so far away. But then they learn quickly that the days are long and the years are short. Most parents look to their child's graduation with a lot of mixed feelings: pride, excitement, fear, confusion, frustration, because they're planning a graduation party for someone that was invited to 20 other graduation parties that are all happening at the same time, and now you're not going to be here for the one I planned for you? I don't know about that. A deep sense of wondering if they've done everything that they possibly could to prepare their child for independence, and probably so much more. But I think one of the biggest feelings that come with something like graduation is this feeling of, you've come so far, but there's still so much to go. Graduation day feels like days in limbo. I graduated high school. I haven't figured out what happens after that. They handed me a diploma for sure. I graduated high school. I don't start college for another 2 months. Do I just work and hang out and I don't see anyone? I graduated high school, but now I'm working a full-time job and I really don't see anyone. And am I really an adult if I still live at my parents' house? I don't know. How does that work? I graduated college, but I haven't landed a job yet. And that's scary. I graduated college and I have a job, but it's not for the degree I just spent how much money on. I graduated by the skin of my teeth. I graduated. Am I even ready to do any of this? I graduated, but why can't my life just begin? Why can't it just happen? And I think a lot of us can relate to a number of these feelings. And I think so often in many different life circumstances, we feel this in-between feeling. We feel this feeling of being in limbo and are unsure of what to do or where to go next. And I also find that Scripture reminds us of this feeling all the time. And if you've been following along with our Old Testament reading plan, you'll probably recognize the names I'm going to mention. And so, if you would please flip to 2 Samuel and 1 Kings, that would be awesome. I will be reading from both today. If you do not have a Bible on you or near you, that is totally okay. All the passages will be up on the screen for you. But with that being said, today we are going to be talking about two men, two kings in particular. We're going to be talking about King David and King Solomon. Now, if you're unfamiliar, King David and King Solomon are father and son. And David served as the second king of Israel, and Solomon took his place after to become the third king of Israel. And I think so much of their story, so much of their transition between their two times reigning says a lot about who God is through seasons of transition and who God expects us to be in seasons of transition. And so today we're going to split our time hearing a little bit about David and his story and his life and his kingdom, and then we're going to hear a little bit about Solomon and the beginning of his. Now, if you don't know anything about David, I'm going to give you, which, I don't know, take it or leave it for what it is. I'm going to give you basically the Macy translation of 1 Samuel, the life of David. Again, this is the Macy translation. Don't put too much stock into it. But David was anointed king of Israel at a young age, but could not immediately become king right away. And he would grow up to be known as a man after God's own heart. He would grow to live and serve under King Saul, the first king of Israel. And he would go on to do mighty things like slay Goliath, and then his world would be turned upside down when King Saul would begin to chase David into the wilderness to kill him, when he realized that David was called to become the next king of Israel. And all of this happens through 1 Samuel. Nothing about David's calling would happen the way that you would expect. Nothing about David's life through 1 Samuel really made any sense at all the moment that he was anointed. David didn't even take the throne of Israel until 2 Samuel chapter 5. And up until that point, he was experiencing grief and war and even murder that others would commit on his behalf, thinking, oh, I'm certain this is going to help David secure his kingdom. I'll just kill this guy. Nothing leading up to David securing his kingdom was smooth at all. At all. And then after 2 Samuel 5, we see God strengthen David and his kingdom. Things are starting to go the way that any king would hope. Their enemies are rising up, but the Lord God of heaven's armies was there fighting with them, fighting their battles and bringing strength that they could not have on their own. And so as an act of worship, one of David's first acts in leadership as king is to bring the Ark of the Covenant, or this box that was God's throne, God's holy presence. He would move it from where it was to the city of Jerusalem. And this all happens between the moment that David was anointed in 2 Samuel 5:3 to the end of chapter 6. Up until this point, from the moment that David was called by God to be king until the moment that God's presence was brought into Jerusalem, David had experienced chaos. David had experienced confusion. David had experienced fear and wilderness and confidence and victory. Nothing leading up to David securing the kingdom was smooth. But things are moving in a new direction. God is offering strength and stability in a new way. In fact, chapter 7 is where we're going to be reading from today, and he gives us just a glimpse of what King David might have been feeling. 2 Samuel 7, 1 and 2 says this. When King David was settled in his palace, and the Lord had given him rest from all the surrounding enemies, the king summoned Nathan the prophet. Look, David said, I am living in a beautiful cedar palace, but the Ark of the Covenant is out there in a tent. The Lord had given him success. And so David can rest in the presence of God. And so as we know about David, the man after God's own heart, he wants to do what would bring glory, honor, and ultimately reverence to God. He wants to make God a temple. He wants to build God this really nice, beautiful, ornate home, just like he has for himself. He doesn't want more than what God has. He wants God to be elevated and recognized. And this sounds great. David is saying, God, you've done all these things for me. God, you have been faithful. God, you have shown up time and time again. You have given me rest. You have brought me from one season into another, and I want you to be honored and recognized. Finally, David is at a spot in his life and in his kingdom. He can rest. Finally, David has a moment to breathe and isn't just in survival mode. I feel like a lot of us in this room, and maybe even our graduates, can really empathize with that feeling of survival mode. Finally, David is in a great spot with God and even building success in battle like any good king with God's help would get, right? Everything is working the way that David would want. He has left a season of chaos and has been transitioned into a season of blessing. And you would think God would respond and say, wow, David, good job. So cool. Okay. But he doesn't. He does something vastly different. And if you go down to starting at verse 8, he says this. Now go and say to my servant David, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I took you from tending sheep in the pasture and selected you to be the leader of my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone. I have destroyed all of your enemies before your eyes. Now I will make your name as famous as anyone who has ever lived on the earth, and I will provide a homeland for my people Israel, planting them in a secure place where they will never be disturbed. Evil nations won't oppress them as they've done in the past, starting from the time I appointed judges to rule my people Israel, and I will give you rest from all of your enemies. Furthermore, the Lord declares that he will make a house for you, a dynasty of kings. For when you die and are buried with your ancestors, I will raise up one of your descendants, your own offspring, and I will make his kingdom strong. He is the one who will build a house, a temple for my name, and I will secure his royal throne forever. I really want to focus on verse 13. He is the one who will build a house, a temple for my name. God just told David no. David said, God, you have brought me from the season of chaos. You've brought me from destruction and fear, and you've brought me into success and rest. And Lord, I want to build this temple for you. I want to honor you. I want to glorify you. I want to worship you. I want to build you this big and awesome thing. And you would think God would say, that's sick, David, go for it. But he doesn't. He says no. God takes this opportunity to tell David exactly who God is. David is being reminded just how faithful God has been and how he has always been present with David, even though he's been living in a tent. And in the Macy translation, verse 13 says, not only are we not building this temple now, you're not going to build it. David, I know you have this idea in your head. I know that you want to do this. I know this seems like the right time to do this. I know this seems like something you should do. I know it seems perfect, but not yet. How confusing is that? Graduates, I'm sure you've been there before. Friends, family, I am certain you have been there before. I am certain that a number of us have said, I know this is what God is calling me to do, but I guess not. I was certain this is what I was supposed to do with my time and my resources and my life, and God told me no. God told me not yet. I was so certain, and this all seems so good. And then God shows up to remind David that he has so much more for him. I have so much more in store for you and your family, David. It isn't what you asked for, but it is far better than you could ever ask or imagine. And so the rest of David's story through 2 Samuel, we find that David kind of runs amok. He does some good stuff, and he does some bad stuff, and he makes mistakes, but he would eventually find his way back to God and continue to be a man after God's own heart. He's a man that is striving to be a person after God's heart who has been told, no, not yet. So that brings us to Solomon, the third king of Israel. And his reign started vastly different than David's did. While another one of David's sons attempts to take Solomon's place as king, David ultimately ensures that Solomon is anointed king of Israel. And even at the end of his life, he does his best to prepare Solomon for this kingdom. He teaches Solomon to be a man after God's heart. He reminds Solomon to follow his laws and reminds Solomon of the covenant promise that God has made to David. David starts his kingship with fear and chaos and wilderness and threats of death. And Solomon is like, man, my brother tried to take the throne. And David's like, it's okay, we'll take care of it. Don't worry about it. And also, here's how to do it. These two transition periods for David and for Solomon are vastly different. After this, Solomon's rule and reign moves pretty smoothly. He has this dream from God where he seeks wisdom, and the Lord grants him wisdom he asks for. But not only that, he grants him riches and fame that he did not ask for, because God just decides to be generous and merciful. And he had victory over enemies. He was living in peace. In fact, 1 Kings 4:25 says that during Solomon's lifetime, all of Israel lived in peace, and he had dominion that was promised to him in this dream. Right? Everything about how Solomon's reign has started is vastly different than how David's reign had started. He has what he wanted and even more from God. Unlike how David's reign started, Solomon seems to be starting this transition in his life and this change in his life exactly how he wants to be. Everything seems to just be going kind of right, kind of like how any king would hope. Solomon is in a really good spot. And how often do we find ourselves in really, really good spots in seasons of transition and we lay stagnant? How many times do we find ourselves in really good health and in really good growing seasons of our lives and decide, okay, I'm good, I've done it, I've arrived. But Solomon doesn't use it as an excuse. Solomon doesn't just sit stagnant. In 1 Kings chapter 5, if you'd be willing to follow me there, again, it's up on the screen for you. It says this. These are the words of Solomon. You know that my father David was not able to build a temple to honor the name of the Lord his God because of the many wars waged against him by surrounding nations. He could not build until the Lord gave him victory over all his enemies. But now the Lord my God has given me peace on every side. I have no enemies and all is well. So I'm planning to build a temple to honor the name of the Lord my God, just as he had instructed my father David. For the Lord told him, your son, whom I will place on your throne, will build the temple to honor my name. We find in 1 Kings chapter 5 that Solomon has heard God's call to build the temple that David longed for. And I'm going to read that one more time because I want you to hear what I'm trying to say. That Solomon has heard the call that God has placed on his life for something that David longed for and wanted. God looks to Solomon and calls him to obedience, even in a task that wasn't initially the desire of his own heart. This isn't something that Solomon wanted. This isn't like something that the Lord had placed on Solomon's heart. He just knew that this is something that David wanted and something that God had orchestrated for him, that God had called him to do. And you may be sitting here thinking, Pastor Macy, why does any of this matter? What is the point you're trying to make? Great question. I would love to tell you. David and Solomon were both experiencing transition. David and Solomon seemingly both were men that desired to follow God and his laws. But David and Solomon had different things to learn from God through their seasons of transition. Now, graduates, y'all can go ahead and get your stuff ready if you would like to. Well, not if you'd like to, I'm telling you. But church, our graduates aren't the only people that are experiencing change and transition. Our lives are constantly in a state of flux, whether we like it or not. Maybe we have unexpected changes and wrenches thrown in our plans. Maybe we're intentionally seeking change and asking God for new and exciting. Maybe our families are changing. Maybe our seasons of life are changing, church. This is natural and this is healthy. And we should be people that are growing and maturing and learning to trust God in new ways all the time. And so I want to challenge you that if you have sat through this service thus far and have thought, wow, I cannot believe I just sat through a graduation Sunday service. I'm not a graduate. This was boring. I want to take a moment to challenge you. I want to take a moment to honestly kind of like plead with you. Please listen to the final charge that I send the students off with. Please listen for the ways that God may be challenging you to lean in and trust a little more. Now, if they're ready, the graduates can come in. And I'm just now realizing that I definitely did not put on Pomp and Circumstance on the computer. So, da, 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 da. Everyone sing along. Da, 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 da. Well, okay, now I can't. Okay, never mind. Sorry. So, I don't. Hi. I was specifically asked to say happy 6-7 Sunday, and that was louder. What was that? Thank you. I appreciate that. Now I don't have to. They're still telling me to wait. Who is holding up the line? You guys had your caps and gowns ready. Yeah, sure. You can start walking up here. There we go. Let's go, friends. Oh, never mind. There's what? All right, yeah, let's go. Woo! Okay. Hey, Elise. Perfect. Y'all are good to stand right there if you want. That's great. Okay, we can turn it off now. All right, friends. So, at the very beginning of this message, one more time, woo! At the very beginning of this message, I said that I wanted the Lord's faithfulness to be the thing that we heard most from today, right? And so today, you will see three graduates standing on the platform, Micah, Taylor, and Ryan. Let's go. Now, this graduation Sunday in particular is a very big deal to me because Micah and Taylor are actually the last to graduate from my original youth group here at BNC, which is really cool. But Micah and Taylor have seen like 22-year-old youth pastor Macy that had no idea what she was doing. They have seen Pastor Macy that had maybe thought that she knew what was going on, and then Pastor Macy that learned real quick that she had to keep learning and keep growing. And so they have impacted this ministry in ways that have challenged me as a youth pastor, so thank you. And Ryan, thank you for the same, even in the short amount of time that I have known you. And so I say all this to say that through the last several years, this ministry is ahead.
Hello. I'm Micah. I graduated from Holy Valley.
Where your plans after high school?
I'm going to Mount Vernon.
I'll forgive you.
And I'm majoring in environmental biology. So, big
Sick.
surprise.
Yeah, right. For real.
And then, my best memory. I'm torn between two, so I'm just going to say them both. Catching snakes at teen camp, number one.
Respect.
And then the walk-in that we do every year here, where we invite Brookside, and we play dodgeball and 9 squared. That's a lot of fun every time. So.
All right, nice. Thank you, Micah.
My name is Brian, and I graduated from
Nice, let's go, yeah.
favorite memory is
Sick. That's great, man. Let's go, yeah. That's awesome. All right. But I also want to mention a few of our other graduates. I won't make you guys stand up here much longer, I promise. You'll notice Taylor DiPiero, she's not here with us this Sunday morning. They are out of town. But she just graduated and is already working like a real adult job at a salon. So she's doing some really cool stuff. So that's awesome. And then we have our 2 college graduates, Tyler Grube and Maddie. And they're not up on the platform here with us, but we love them and we're very grateful for them. Maddie is right there. We are so excited the ways that God is using them. And in the same way that Micah and Taylor are the last to graduate from my original youth group, Maddie and Tyler were the first. And so it's just a really cool moment, really good graduation Sunday for me, not to make it about me. I'm a little bit too emotional. But anyway, I say all that to say that God has been really faithful and has done some really awesome stuff. Again, I said all these things. For the past 5 years, God has continued to build this ministry into something that has allowed us to see students grow well into their college years and now past them. And so God is faithful, and we are so grateful. And so, graduates, before we close in prayer, I want to leave you with this. You're in a season of transition, a season of almost but not quite. Seasons of transition are sometimes like David experiences. We feel led to something and are passionate about it, but God doesn't seem to lay what we expect into our hands. And in those moments, our seasons of being like David, we're called to trust that God's ways are better than we could ever ask or imagine. We're called to trust even when our plan and our desires don't line up with what God has for us. Sometimes in transition, we're Solomon. Sometimes we get to see God move in big and mighty ways that are exciting. But sometimes in those moments, we're given a call and we're given a blueprint and we're called to act on it. And so today in your graduation gifts, they're out on the tables. You guys already looked through them already. But you'll find a Bible, a journal, and a cup. And these are for moments when you feel like David, where you're in seasons of transition and you need to practice trust. These are intended to help you grow into people after God's heart. These are supposed to help refresh you and strengthen you in those seasons of transition. And you are also given, I don't actually know what they're called, but they're little Allen wrench things, and they're really helpful. I don't know what they're called, but I have some. That's why I know they're helpful. These tools are usually used for the reason I got those ones specifically is they match college bedroom furniture, so you can take things apart, and it's super helpful. I did it on purpose. It's functional, But these are to remind you to always be prepared to follow God into the building stages, to always be prepared to follow God into what his plans are for your life, and to just fully trust. And so I'm going to ask you guys to stand just on the floor right here, so you can go down the stairs. We're following Micah. Man, dude, you really just did not luck out. But, all right, I'm going to ask them to do that, and then I'm going to ask their families if they would like to come and stand around them. I'm going to pray a closing prayer. Families aren't going to be asked to pray out loud, I promise. They're just going to stand around their graduates. And then I'm also going to ask BNC youth volunteers and BNC youth if they would be interested in coming up and surrounding students in prayer while I close. The congregation, I'm asking that you do join us in prayer. And my heart and my prayer always with every season, y'all can go ahead and keep moving. My heart and my prayer through every sermon is that every person in the room can honestly say they know God better because they were here on a Sunday morning, right? And so that is my prayer. That is something that I already believe in, something I already pray over. But today's prayer is specifically going to be over our graduates. So know that you are loved and that you are prayed for, and that I hope that the Lord has done something in your heart and in your life today. But today, I really want to make sure that we're praying over our graduates because they are important and incredible, and I'm grateful to serve. So as soon as I'm done with prayer, what's going to happen? I need everyone to hear me because there are rules. What's going to happen is after I am done praying, the graduates and their families are going to walk out first, and everyone else is going to wait. So they're going to walk out, they're going to go to tables, and then once they are out, you guys are welcome to go and get cupcakes and enjoy and linger, friends. And so I love you, but Jesus loves you a whole lot more. Join me in prayer, please. God, thank you for today. Thank you for our graduates. Thank you for the ways that you have just blessed this ministry and blessed these students and blessed their families. Lord, you have gifted BNC Youth with Micah, Taylor, and Ryan. You have blessed us with knowing who they are and knowing their hearts and in watching you work in their lives in ways that are incredible. Lord, you have created special people for special purposes, and I am blessed by it all the time. And so, Lord, I just ask that your hand would be over them, that your hand would be over their lives as they enter into seasons of transition, that they follow you fully and completely, and that they could see your hand at work in every moment, that in every moment that they lean in to trust you a little bit more, that they see more and more of your grace, and they see more and more of your character, and that they long to be more like you, that they continue to pursue you and your holiness all the days of their life, that they would be your people and you would be their God. And Lord, I just ask that you would place a special hand over their families, that through this season of transition that they would learn new patterns and behaviors and new transition in their own family dynamic as well, Lord, that you would bless them, that they would support students as they move on, and that students would support their families as they're grieving a little change. And so, Lord, we love